Welcome to the Channel Surfers, where we're just two guys trying to surf the channel waves, trying to help people, calling out some of the challenges that we see, helping people navigate the partner world without really wiping out. I'm Jeff Lennon, and I'm joined today with my co-host, John McCabe. John, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jeff. How you doing?
I am doing fantastic. I'm actually like an 8-year-old kid getting ready for summer vacation.
I know why. I know why. Enthusiasm to complete the podcast today, because today we're talking about something a lot of partners don't want to hear about, and that's the generalist model. We do everything for everyone. From what we hear now is getting squeezed out. So that's our
Yeah.
topic for today.
Yeah. And we kind of went back and forth. I think this is an interesting topic, not only because of the alignment with the types of partners, right? So you got your VARs and your MSPs, where they're trying to be everything to everybody, right? They're trying to be that generalist, which I understand is great. But what seems to be a trend that seems to be happening right now, and I think AI is a big factor in this, is to really be more specific, have a clear message, a clear reward, clear category alignment and clear deliverables, right?
Yeah, and I think the safest choice used to be staying, broad and being able to do everything for everyone. But in 2026, staying broad might be the riskiest move that a partner can make.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So hopefully what we could do for our guests, I mean, I gathered some notes. I just happened to sit on a really interesting ecosystem podcast with partnership leaders. And so I just felt like the topic is super relevant. So today, what we want to do is we're going to break down from our perspective what we kind of see happening, why we believe it's happening. And then, at the end of the day, you got to pick a lane, right? You got to pick a lane, choose where you want to be, how you want to do that so that both you, your team, and your clients know where you're going. And you can also be more effective in driving revenue.
I love it. I love it. That's perfect. So why don't we get into it? And I think maybe what I'm wondering, our audience is wondering, is who do most partners start as or why do most partners start as generalists?
Oof. Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think they start as generalists because, first of all, you're small, or even medium-sized organizations, right? You want to try to be everything as much as possible to your clients. I mean, I've run into the situation I know where you've gotten to a point you're like you have to be honest with clients and be like, that's not something we do. Let me introduce you to XYZ, right? Because I think in the beginning, it just makes sense to try to be everything to a specific client, but it also makes sense when it's out of your specific area of expertise that you look to, move that, or at least refer somebody else in. And that's where, I hate to say it, that's where good partnerships come in. Because if you're good at something, and somebody else is good at something, then you can bring it together. And I think it helps you be more successful.
Yeah, but isn't the problem that, one day you wake up and, you're busy, but you're not profitable? What's that, my favorite saying? Never mistake activity for achievement, right? I think it really lends well at that situation. Like, you're very busy, but you're not profitable. Why? Why
Yeah.
is that?
Well, and it's an evolution, right? You've got to be able to change. I think you have to be able to change and grow and augment yourself, right? The generalist stage and the reason I'm calling it a generalist stage is, people are trying to be everything to everyone, but I think it usually happens in the beginning, right? So I think it's normal in the beginning, in early stages, as companies are building out. I think the challenge is, the broad aspect is really no longer sustainable. And I think this is where I'm seeing more and more, having specialization really means that you can drive repeated outcomes more consistently, which better aligns with your clients and the services you're trying to offer and the
Mm.
solutions.
But what are some of the first signs we've seen that a partner needs to narrow? When do we see they're just too broad and they have to narrow?
Well, I think the one you just said, I mean, I think you start to see the law of diminishing returns around, what your revenue is, because you have too many buckets to fill, too many gaps. You're too broad. You're not focused. So you're spending money across a broader cross section. So I think that impacts it impacts the revenue of the company. I also think it impacts, how people can execute, how they can figure out what they're doing, right? I think the simple part is, and I want to be careful because it's not so much about being niche.
Yeah.
There's a difference in my mind between niche and positioning. And the niche is technically who you serve. Positioning is technically why you win.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. And I think that was something I was thinking about as well. Like, niche is so specific and you're positioned well, and like it goes along the same lines as a trust basis, right? But
Absolutely.
look, let's not, kid ourselves. We're all here to make money, right? And if you can't zero in on where the money is and focus on the money, what's the point of being so wide and serving everybody or everyone for everything, right? It just doesn't make sense as a business move.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of flip the table a tiny bit, right? So let's kind of frame out where, because we talk about the generalist and what's happening, right? So let's talk about kind of that problem, right? And I call it the squeeze, right? And what's happening
Mm,
is you're seeing this squeeze with margin. You're seeing it with the attention that you can spend, the attention of your clients. And what ends up happening, I think generalists end up almost becoming commoditized to a degree, right? Because now they're getting compared on price instead of the
yeah.
value and what they're driving, right?
Yeah. And buyers don't want like IT services. They want fix my specific problem, and that's part of the squeeze, right?
Yeah. Well, partner. They look the people want the partners. Vendors even want partners who understand
Mhm.
how to create that repeat motion. I say it all the time.
Pull
Keep it
through,
simple.
right?
Keep
Yeah.
it easy. Right. Keep it
Yeah.
repeatable. And if you can do that, then you can generate pull through. So,
Yeah. That's right.
what
Yeah.
would you? And again, I not to put you on the spot because we did talk about it, and I kind of shared some of the notes from the call I had with that webinar that I sat through. What would you say in your, like, just based on and some of this, because we did jot down some notes and stuff, but the squeezes that are happening, or the pressure that's starting to happen, these VARs and MSPs and MSSPs with how they're going to market. What are you seeing as that squeeze or pressure point?
I think there are three we should highlight. The buyer squeeze, they want specialized outcomes and proof. Vendor squeeze, vendors invest in partners who create repeatability and pipeline. Like, why are we why are we working with these partners if they're not going to create pipeline, right? And that's a squeeze right there. But then marketplace squeeze,
Hmm.
offers are a clear, packaged, and differentiated win. But
Wow.
also, are you promoting it and selling the marketplace? Because if you're not as a vendor and you're not utilizing your partners, that's one way you're gonna, get squeezed out of that opportunity, right?
100%, man. It is interesting because the marketplace, and something we've brought up on a couple previous shows, right? So the marketplace is a great opportunity. It's a great channel. It's a great avenue to position your solution, your product, right? Whether it's the AWS, whether it's
Mm.
Azure, whether it's GCP. um, we've even, I'll throw the distributors in my mind kind of offer a marketplace kind of approach, so to speak. But
Yep.
you can't, it's not like you're putting your stuff on the shelf at the supermarket, and hey, I just got a can of beans, come on in, like it's in aisle 6. You still have to go promote that to get people to go to aisle 6 to get your product. So that's often lost on a lot of people, and we know a bunch of people that's where their focus is. They're focused on helping these companies, even though they are in the marketplace, to figure out how to go execute in there, because it is still a channel motion. There's still a
Yeah.
process to it. um, and just also keeping in mind, right? Like, you know, busy is not the same as valuable. You use that John Wooden quote at the beginning, which I think is tremendous, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that whole, just because you're busy, I know I'm trying to think of the quote that I heard before. There was another, but anyway, I think of it this way: the broader based generalist approach is probably more around activity, where I think being a specialist can win the preference and win the actual, because people want to know, hey,
Mm-hmm.
this is going to come in, and there's not going to be a lot of fluff around what you're trying to do.
Yeah, no, I agree. And talking about specialization, I want to take a minute to highlight our sponsor, Extreme. Slow partner payouts kill motivation and stall pipeline generation, right? Extreme fixes that. With Extreme, you can instantly you can instantly send global commissions, MDF, rebates, and spiffs in over 140 currencies with flexible payout options your partners actually want. Stop managing payments manually. Start scaling with extreme.com. It's amazing how easy they make your life when you can get MDF or spiff payments out to your partners and they're happy, right? So look them up, extreme.com, xtrm.com, and we thank them for our sponsorship.
Yep. Awesome, man. Love those guys. And what's interesting, John, is the specialization that they provide. I think a lot of times is often overlooked, right? Because we say this, anybody who's been in sales or channels for more than, a cup of coffee knows compensation drives habit. So if you can leverage something like XTRM, you're going to have a much smoother, the rails are going to be greased, so to speak, so that you can more fluidly through the process. So
absolutely. Yeah. And we just had a guest on talking about, ways to help, MSPs grow their business and, being able to, compensate or help them, motivate them.
Yep.
With a tool like Extreme, you can do that, right?
Absolutely, man. Awesome.
Yeah. So now let's talk about the specialization decisions. Why do you choose a specialization, and or what do you choose and why? Right. I think the hardest part is admitting you need a lane. It's picking the lane.
Yeah. Well, I think you have to do some, reflection and an honest reflection of the company, the solution you have, the people, the skills, and making sure that you're in a good place, right? Evaluating all that. We talk about people, process, and technology. I've been saying that since and I'll date myself, since the '90s. But it hasn't really changed, right? And here's the reality. Specialization is almost like having a trade, right? You may give up a little revenue to gain margin and velocity, but in the end, like, it's an investment in that process. So know that you have something that is of value, that it's very specific. You're going to be an expert to be called upon because, I've heard this saying where somebody was like, they were asked to do something. They sat down in this boardroom and somebody said, "Hey, can you create this, create our logo?" And the person sat down and, basically drew out a thing and boom, turned around and on a napkin and said, "Here you go." And they were like, "Well, wow, that was really great." But this person was so specialized, like, that really happened fast. And like, well, why are we paying you? Why are we paying you all this money? And it's like, well, you're not paying me for the 10 minutes it just took me to do this. You're paying for the 30 years of experience I have that allowed me to do this in the past 10 minutes. Right. So, but I also think,
sorry,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
I was just going to say, so go ahead.
I was going to say, are there any simple, specializations frameworks that you know of and that you can highlight for the audience?
Well, I'm a big Covey guy, right? So I always like to think with the end in mind. So I'm all about the outcome. And if you're driving outcome, it's all about whatever it is. We're in cybersecurity, so it's all about, reduce ransomware risk, reducing risk overall, doing things like that, reducing downtime, simplifying procurement processes, simplifying the SOC and how people are using. Like, I think the outcome is super, super important. I would also say, and again, for the specialization piece, why I think it's important, another framework or area is the environment. Are you working in Microsoft 365? You're working in AWS, you're working in OT, you're working in hybrid cloud, hyperscalers. And if you take a step back and you just kind of go out, like, I know a handful of people right now, and they're building out these solutions. There's one, 100% focused on the hyperscalers. And then when you really drill in, he's really focused on the AWS as a hyperscaler. I have another friend, and he's focused on the GSIs because AI is impacting everybody, but that's their focus. So I think environment would be my second. I think, geez, because we were just
talking about like outcome, like reducing ransomware as a risk, but simplifying procurement.
Exactly.
Is a big thing, right?
Yeah, no, that's what I was just saying, right? So, but that's why I was kind of working from backwards there. But when I think about that, right, and to your point, that comes back to the outcome is going to be based on what the problem is, right? So identifying the problems that you're trying to go after. So whether you're working in, BCDR for backup, continuity, or I'm sorry, business continuity, disaster recovery, or you're working over here trying to do something in, vulnerability management, or whether you're trying to do something in GRC. I think that's really important. And then what's also interesting, and we're dealing with this with a couple of our clients, is the verticals.
Yeah.
And the verticals can also be broken into, what I'm learning is micro verticals. So even a subset of the vertical to be hyper focused, because it just, to say you're in healthcare, what part of healthcare? To say you're doing, financial services, what part of financial services? So that you can drill down, because there's so many companies and you want to make sure that your target and your message is clean and clear. So,
But what I find, I really like working vertical sales, and especially partners that are a part of a vertical, like an ecosystem partner vertical, because you typically find the technologies are very simpatico, right? They can all kind of help. And yeah, you like that big word? They
I
all
did.
help that customer you're going after, because they all can, technologically work together, right? And when you're in a vertical, it's a lot of word of mouth and reputation and trust, because they all kind of buy from the same resellers and vendors, right? And if they know you have a good product, they're going to want to talk to you. If you have a bad product or you've done something wrong, they'll hear about that as well. So I really like the vertical ecosystems and the specialization of that.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, think about it, right? That's why we're talking about, the generalist is, I think, on the ropes, because you really want to be specialized so that you can help people get to a better point, right? You're going to have, your message is going to be cleaner. Your sales motion is going to be cleaner. You're going to have the ability to drive more repeatable outcomes, in my opinion. It's like we were doing an exercise, just kind of just going off here. I mean, without getting into the minutia, but we were doing an exercise with one of our clients and got a list, right? So we get this list, whatever, it's like 15, 1,600 customers. Took that list, broke it into three main ICPs, and then started to go through and dissect that. And then I started some scraping, so to speak, right, to get signals, and realized that what we thought was, for example, what I thought was in the top three, or was what there was, we had four tiers, because originally it was, first three tiers for the ICP, and then we had a fourth tier that was out of scope. But as we started doing kind of research, right, I'll call it the web scraping, looking for signals kind of thing, what we discovered was there were adjacent verticals that technically were like not really in the main vertical, but because of the signals of the specialization of what the solution is that we're working with, it took it from a tier 4, moved it to tier 2. Like, whoa. Like, and for people to understand that, it's like, would never have even thought about looking them, but the more we started looking out to see what's happening in the market, that those signals about the client, their process, the buyers, their, how they're using technology, were they breached in the last
Very
3 years,
powerful. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it actually, the whole point is, we want it to be as specialized as possible, so that we're not just shotgunning, right, every single client. That's the big thing.
Right. So maybe, I don't know, would you say specialization is like not doing fewer things? It's doing fewer things with deeper proof.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. All right.
So, well, let's, and before we jump, because you got me thinking, and again, I'm trying to relate it to with things, that real world things that we're doing, right? So when I start thinking about the specialization, and like you just said, right, you're trying to do fewer things, but do them better, do them deeper, and execute at a higher level, right? And also have that repeatability. I also see the shift, the changes, and what I'll call, almost like a market reality, right? There's this, the conversation is changing, and as it gets easier for you to explain things, you start to become more confident. You start to, not only become more confident, you start to simplify the message, right? That's something I've always said. If you can explain it to a 7-year-old, then you probably really know what the hell you're doing, because you've simplified it to a point that you could explain it to practically anyone, right?
Yeah. I think that's a good point. Did you want to move on to the next topic?
Yeah, we can. Let me, because I'm just looking at the outline. So, I mean, let's think about this. We always talk about trust, right? And buyers trust. You have to build the trust, with the buyer, and the buyer's trying to build trust with the customer. How do you build that faster? And what would you look for, right? So, what are some things from your experience, right, when you're trying to build that trust, and you're trying to make an impact, something. Let's use our own business, right? So we've got 60 days to build up a ramp. What are some things that you would want to look for in those first 60 days that help because you're specialized, or help that because you're trying to drive more? Like, what are some of the metrics there are things that you would look for?
Definitely, trying to match our ICP with the IPP, make sure we're talking to the right partners, understanding where, if there's a specialized need for that client, that partner can accommodate the specialized need,
Mhm.
building out the framework around how to enable the partner so they can talk about your product and bring it to their customer because they're the trusted advisor. And then basically helping the partner set up the meeting and get us in there to start to solve a problem for their clients.
I love that, man. And by just a shout out to you. You showed me something this morning, so and I'll gloat for you. But Johnny's Devin, man. Johnny is Devin. He built a super cool portal out template, so to speak. I mean, again, it's just in my mind, right? It's kind of changing the whole approach. But it
Yeah.
comes back to you're supporting the part, supporting the partner that can support the client, that you can go out there and build those things. So here's a
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's a question for you. Because as we're doing this, and I think we're seeing this in real time, what is more important, the deal size or deal velocity? And when does it shift between them in your mind? It's just God, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm just
No,
curious.
deal velocity. I mean, deal size. I don't care what a deal size is. Revenue is revenue, but I want more opportunities, not just a big one honking big
Yeah.
deal, because you're going to spend a lot of time and energy on that deal versus getting multiple deals. I'd rather see 10 deals at $250,000 or below than one $3 million deal, although it is nice. But what do you have after that? And what happens with sales reps, it's just a natural part of being a sales rep. Like if you close a big deal, then you kind of take your foot off the pedal a little bit because you're like, that was a
Yeah.
real high, a big mountain to climb, and we got to the peak and we closed it. And now I'm going to be like, woo. So if you're relying on one deal, it's going to be a slim, year for you. In fact, but if you have 10 deals, you're constantly going to be busy and having to work those deals and keep the deals moving.
Awesome. No, I like that. And again, but I think you framed it right. It's great. Like, first of all, I agree, except for the fact, I'll throw this out there. I think regardless of what you're selling, everybody, you need to have a whale, and the whales are going to be
Mm.
different based on your business. Um, but if your average deal size is, I'll throw a number out. If your average deal size is 100K, pardon me, hypothetically, you should have at least one or two, I'll say whales, or larger opportunities in your pipeline, so that you have a balance, because you have one way of keeping the lights on as you're driving a business, and the other is, you want to be able to actually help the company, move
Mhm.
into a much more, positive direction. This is what I find interesting, though, and this is where I think this whole generalist, shifting from the generalist to more of a specialized or focused approach, right? It's going to change how you do sales calls. You and I have just had experience in the last, I'll say, 45, 60 days, moving the sales calls
Mhm.
from feature function to outcome based conversations. It's huge, right? It also changes, the vendors and how you're working with them. For us, and I just talked about this whole qualification and the tiers of the ICP, and you mentioned the IPP and aligning that, right? You start to get better leads, you get better focus, you can drive better support, and here's the best part: you get a more aligned co-sell operation and execution. I think that's key.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I think I would say I agree with you. You have to have a whale. You have to have big deals in the pipeline. But it all just boils down to what is our job
Ooh.
as a channel executive. We're tasked with bringing partners into our organization to help us sell our product, expand the reach. And if we have one partner doing one big deal, it just doesn't help grow the pipeline as we want to. But
Oh,
I see,
absolutely.
I see the
Absolutely.
importance of it. I just think you have to. Deal velocity to me is a much more critical component there.
100%. Right. I do. I think that because again, it's the repeatability thing. And if you can get to that sweet spot, right, of instead of trying, and I'm not saying you can't, you got to have them, but I think, but not trying to chase everyone to be, not everything can be a whale. Um,
No.
I would recommend people read Moby Dick and figure out like, you don't want to be the Ahab on your team,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You don't want to like go around trying to find that one big deal and never get it, right? Or always be out of your reach. That
So
is no way to sell.
no, so look, I mean, and I don't think what we're talking about is that crazy or revolutionary. I think a lot of people kind of say it. I think, again, just based on our conversation, just trying to put a framing around it so that I think people understand it. And by the way, to do that, um, when we come in, I'm starting to realize it more when we come in and we start to help organizations. Part of what we're doing is helping them specialize. We're helping them to
Mm.
narrow their focus, narrow their approach to the market, narrow their what their value prop is, how they can deliver and execute. But there's, I think, some hard lessons that happen here because you've got some people that this is, I hate to say it, right? If they're the founder of the company or they're early in, I mean, it's their baby. This is what they're doing, and they're very comfortable. And basically you want to try to keep it honest
Mm.
because moving to a specialization for some people is hard because you can see all these other things, but you're telling them, no, let's just focus here because
Hmm.
this is the 80-20, right? It's that Presidio. This is the 80% of where 20% of this stuff is going to drive 80% of your revenue. And people are like, whoa, that I don't know about that. I
Well,
think it's proven more times than not. So
yeah, and I think the scariest part about this conversation is trying to let go. How hard is it for you to change what you're doing? I know years ago when I was younger, I worked at a company and uh, I was asked to move into a different position that was totally different than what I was doing, and I
hmm,
just couldn't get used to it for a while. It was nerve wracking because I was used to doing something one way, and then I had to do something totally different. And that's the same, for anybody who's trying to change. It's just letting go of what you're doing and moving to the next step and progressing from there.
absolutely. Look, I mean, at the end of the day, you got to keep the lights on. You got to pay the bills, right? And a lot of times they're going to look at it like, well, the generalist approach, like we're still paying the bills, like we're still paying things. The problem is, and you said like they've kind of flatlined, and yeah, they're making money, but the margins are gone, and it's a struggle because they're spread too thin, right? It's the whole, what's the other analogy? I'll probably beat this one up. Spreading the peanut butter, and if you're not, right, what happened in the old days, right? You spread that peanut butter and you would tear up the bread. I don't know why that makes so much sense to me, but you just gotta be careful. But
Yeah,
here's what's
yeah.
interesting. Here
I
to me,
love that
here's
analogy, by the way. I love
the
that.
peanut butter one. And I
Mhm.
apologize to all the nut allergy people that are listening. I do apologize. Um, you're missing it, man. I mean, don't get me wrong. Cashew butter is pretty good too. I've had that. Um, but
With
anyway,
the cold butter on cold bread, it just doesn't spread. It's the same thing, right?
but I think, and again, just having seen it, the top two or three things that pop out is, first of all, the lessons are hard, and when you first go through that iteration, start becoming a little bit more specialized, narrowing the focus.
Yeah.
Your message is not always going to be right, and you've got to iterate fast. You've got to learn. You got to fail fast, fail forward, kind of thing. Um, and this is going to probably make people go and turn it off. But you may lose some customers, but in the end, you're going to gain better customers that are better aligned and are more profitable for you because the ones that you have aren't cutting it. And that's something that's hard. Again, you just got to look at it. I've seen this recently as well. and not that I'm, there's going to be internal management changes. You have to. And by doing that, you also give the team better clarity. They see a better approach. They see better execution. They know what the marching orders are so that they're going to be able to execute, I think, more consistently. So,
Yeah. So, and that kind of begs the question, like, what was harder than expected when narrowing it down? Like, how hard was it, and what did you do to cut? And how
yeah.
did you figure out what to focus on? Right. What do you wish you did earlier? Before you got into this generalist stage? Like, hindsight is
Man.
2020. I get it, but what do you wish you were doing earlier? And then, you know, what's the first question a generalist partner should ask themselves on Monday morning? Is it, how much opportunity do I have to work on today? Or is it, am I adding another feature service that I can, help a customer with? I think you got to understand, what direction you want to head in for that week.
Hmm.
Right.
No, I think, look, the Monday morning quarterback is tough. And what's interesting is, and we run into this a lot with our approach to the business. Everybody wants us to be a referral for them, right? So, and to be a good referral, like, just to be this is where I struggle with this. Somebody says, "Oh, yeah, I'll work with you guys, but just be a referral." The challenge I have with that is, if their message isn't clean, crisp, clear, and can be executed and make sense and it's repeatable, it makes it hard to go through that referral piece, because you're now, everything is becoming uniquely qualified. And it just, so I find it interesting that getting the organizations understand that they have to narrow their focus, and that's how they'll
Mm-hmm.
win. I heard this fives, and it was picking one problem, one market, one channel to go to market on, one message, and you basically do that for 1 year. And the whole point was, it was about focus and clarity. Now, I'm not saying that's for everybody, but it does. What the whole point is, keep it down to one thing for each, and then just start going out and just being repeatable. I just think it could be great, and I think it's going to change the future, right? I think it's
Yeah.
going to give a different view and a different perspective.
Yeah. I think this is a good point to kind of like give what the future holds. Like, talk about the future. What are your famous 3 points for the future?
I don't know if I started taking notes here because I have two, but I think specialization is, in my opinion, it's, and maybe that's not the best word to use, but it's what we're using today to help frame it
Mhm.
out, and I think it's going to
Yeah.
evolve, but I think it's going to become table stakes. I think it is going to be the clearest differentiator to help separate you from the pack. And let's face it, AI is compressing what the generalist tasks are. That's
Yeah.
what AI does really well. It takes a lot of the general things that are, stupid, simple, repeatable, and helps you take
Mhm.
care of them. I think the marketplaces, at least from what I'm seeing, and I'd love to get thoughts and feedback from people, I think the marketplaces favor packages that are offered
For
from
sure.
from a specific piece of direction. Um, I think buyers, I think the customers are expecting proof, right? And they want proof, they want references, and they want, I hate to say this, man, but they want faster time to value, not just they want faster time to value. And I think that's really interesting. And then you could go, we could go into, some of the specialty fields that we work in, but I think those are probably the three. AI is compressing the generalist task. The marketplace is in favor of these packages
Mhm.
and these approaches because it's simple, easy. But I think the buyer, at the end of the day, is the one who wants proof, reference, and faster time to value.
Yeah, and I could say like a 3B would be underserved domains like compliance and
Ooh.
insurance readiness, OT, identity, cloud posture, data resilience. But I think your three really kind of summarize and highlight, that the specialization, or the generalist, I should say, dilemma.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's I guess where it's going to come back to, right? We talked about, the change in the market, the focus, the problem, right? The challenges with it, and then where the future is going. But let's face it, right? to be able to do these things and do them effectively, you got to be able to have proof for the business. So, what would be your top three metrics or KPIs? And again, just kind of spitballing here a little bit because we've already used a couple, so don't feel free to kind of go back. But I'm just thinking for our audience, for me, it's like what are the metrics and some of the key performance indicators that we want to focus on to prove that we're going in the right direction, even though initially it may not look like we've got headwinds, but eventually it's gonna, the clock's going to fall, so to speak, or I'm sorry, the dominoes
I would say,
fall.
I would say win rate and cycle time changes after specialization. The average contract value and expansion rate. I mean, we were talking with one of our guests about how they can, help an MSP expand after the initial deal. I think that's really critical, right? What about time to first dollar in a new vertical?
Wow.
You're trying to establish your position in that vertical. And once you get your first dollar, you're like, man, this is what we got to do, right? We're going to move ahead. And then I think a really important one, partner attach rate on eligible deals. If you create a deal, can your partner help you with it? Are you able to attach them and have them help you push that deal to close?
And do you have the right systems in place to help you do that? Right.
Yeah.
But dude, I love that. Oh man. Was that Will Taylor's episode, TFD? Time to first dollar?
Yes.
He threw out a lot of acronyms in that episode. That was awesome. But as soon as you said that, I'm like, TFD. Love it.
Yeah.
No, but I do think it's important to throw one other one in that I thought for sure you were going to say, only because I know you like the whole margin, right? But the gross margin percentage, being able to provide extra margin because you now have good margin on your products. You are like to be able to provide partners with additional margin to do deals that they're it just, I mean, it's, but like I said, it can be hard in the beginning. I think it can be hard. So, but I love that. That was awesome.
For sure. Well, we're bumping up against the top of the hour. So I think we've gone over your three points. And we could probably put this one to bed right now, but any final thoughts, Jeff, on Generalists?
So you got me thinking about this Monday morning quarterback. So as you were giving your points, and I'm going to kind of steal them, but I would say here's my top three actions, top three takeaways, the Monday morning quarterback thing, whatever you want to call it. Number one, and I said this about when we were talking about the go-to-market in a previous episode, but write down your current positioning in one sentence. So in other words, try to be as simple and as clean as possible. So write down your current positioning in one sentence. And if it starts with or has anywhere in there, we do everything, just crumble up that paper, throw it away, start over. That'd be number one. The second would be go look at the last 10 wins. I've also talked about this. We focus a lot on where we lost to try to get better. Go look at your last 10 wins. Look for patterns, look for the verticals, look for the problem, the environment, and the outcomes. And then take those 5 and start to figure out how do you build that into your specialization approach. And if it makes sense, because you should see some type of pattern there. And then the last that I'll throw out here is pick a lane, pick a swim lane, man. Even if you do it for 30, 60 days, pick a swim lane, develop a package, put together an offer, keep it simple. And have a simple proof story, have a simple way of articulating what it is, and then just try for 30 days, for 60 days, just see if it starts to resonate, because I think that'll be the proof is in the pudding kind of thing. So that would be my story.
Yeah, no, for great summary there for this topic. So, well, with that, we'll call it a pod, and we'll do our typical sign off. If anyone is interested in getting in touch with us, you could go to our website. You could reach us at john@channelsurfers.com or jeff@channelsurfers.com, or on our LinkedIn page, which one of our listeners reached out to us today, and on our LinkedIn page. So you could do that as well. Every Tuesday, we our latest pod release, so you could get us there. And certainly you can listen to us on any of the podcasting services that are out there.
Awesome.
So until our next show, Jeff, thanks again for doing this and being the co-host.
John, thanks for being a co-host as well, man. And just remember, everybody, clarity creates momentum.
I love it. Until the next time, we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.